Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Kylene.
Hello, Patrick.
Why are you laughing?
No reason.
Okay. Hey, so today we're going to talk about some of our recommendations or some of our highlights that you could say are active in a healthy marriage, or certain behaviors that come about that are positive behaviors that can come about in a healthy marriage. You know, this whole process of going through addiction recovery, betrayal recovery, rebuilding a relationship is a, and some people may not like this term, but is a journey. And, you know, one of the things or one of the reasons why it is that is because in a lot of cases, we don't see it modeled very well. We don't see healthy relationships modeled in our lives. So, you know, it takes a lot of vulnerability. It takes a lot of learning. It takes a lot of, sometimes, well, actually, in a lot of cases, it takes very, very uncomfortable moments. You could even argue pain that kind of shapes you. But, you know, if you're moving in the right direction, you're thinking about where you want to get to with your partner, like what is it that you want to achieve with your partner? What is victory in a relationship for you? You know, is victory in a relationship getting the other partner to, you know, say, okay, yeah, you were right? Or is victory in a relationship having a mutuality to it, having a moment where you can both be vulnerable with each other? Is it enjoying each other's company? And Kylene has done a great job curating a couple key points today to that we're going to talk through.
Yeah, I think I like the point that you made about it not being modeled. And so that's sort of one of the thoughts behind, you know, last week we were talking, okay, let's actually talk about what safety looks like. And same thing this week is, what does healthy relationships look like? Like, let's actually kind of talk that and break it down a little bit and think about, like, what are the characteristics? Because sometimes when I talk to partners, that's like a hard thing for them to kind of think through. Like, well, I don't, like, what is it that I'm working towards? Like, what is normal? What is healthy? What is like something that's good, you know? And so if we haven't seen it maybe modeled in our parents or our grandparents or in our own relationships in the past, sort of getting out of certain patterns might be more difficult if we don't know what, you know, if we don't have something clearly defined, something very specific that we're working towards. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I thought we would just kind of talk through some of that today. But before we do, there's a trend on TikTok that I think it's appropriate for the topic today. So we're going to start with that. It's called bare minimum.
Is surprising your partner with TikTok trends?
Mm-hmm. No, I told you about this patterns. The other day. Yes, it is actually. Okay. It's on the list. All right. It's called bare minimum or princess treatment. So basically all I do is I ask you, I say something like an activity or a thing, and then you have to say it's bare minimum in the relationship or it's princess treatment.
Okay.
All right. Remembering my birthday.
Bare minimum.
Yeah. Cooking dinner.
Bare minimum.
Opening the car door. Situational in between. Yeah. Like if we were going on a date or something, you'd probably open it up. But like when we're just running out to Kroger, right. I can open my own car door. Mm-hmm. Occasionally getting just because gifts.
Bare minimum.
Okay. Texting back in a timely manner.
Bare minimum.
Mm-hmm. Understanding my hormonal cycle.
Princess treatment.
What?
That is like the mystery of the Sphinx.
No, you actually have a really good handle on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Making my morning drink and setting it on my nightstand before I wake up every day.
I would say that's bare minimum.
Oh, really? I kind of think that's princess treatment, but I'll go with bare minimum.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
It's so easy. It's just like it's baked into my patterns.
I love it. So you could translate that into like bringing somebody coffee in the morning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, bare minimum. Now. Yeah, I want to know you say this. Remembering my drink order, like if we went to Starbucks a lot, for example.
Oh, that's princess treatment. I can't remember that stuff, even when you tell me in the line.
Okay.
I'm like, wait, what are you getting again?
That's fair. Pumping gas if we're together in the car.
Bare minimum.
Mm-hmm. Heating up my car in the winter.
I'd say bare minimum. We have a garage.
Situationally appropriate.
Yeah.
Used to do that. I think when we lived in the old house and we didn't have a garage where like my car could go in. Yeah. You'd like scrape the window off and stuff. Getting me a snack before bed.
That's princess treatment.
Really? I think that's bare minimum.
No, that's princess treatment.
All right. Cool. Yeah, that is princess treatment because sometimes on the rare occasion, I'll even say, I need a snack, and you're already in bed. So that's princess treatment.
Yeah, that is princess treatment. Yeah.
I have been thinking about putting snacks in my nightstand, so that would be a shorter walk.
So I would get up from my side.
I can put them in your nightstand.
Come over to your side
but the thing
deliver
is,
you the snacks.
Yeah, because it's not just the snack, Patrick. It's the experience of you make the best snack combos.
Yeah.
And it's so sweet that you make me my snacks. And they're so much better when you make them.
Okay. All right. I'll take that. I'll take that compliment.
It's because you infuse the snack bowl with love.
Positive energy and love.
So it's not the same if I just grab it out of my nightstand drawer,
Yeah, good point.
Okay, that is princess treatment though.
Yeah.
Hey, that's pretty good. Good job. That's all the questions.
All right, that's it.
Yeah,
Thank you for joining us.
And that is a healthy relationship.
Yeah, it's a healthy relationship.
Okay. All right. So some of the other things we kind of wanted to talk about before we jump into, some of the pillars or whatever you want to call that today. We have always had a fairly good foundational connection. I think I would say that. And that's part of what has allowed us to move through all of the hard things that we have navigated together as a couple. But I was thinking about before we decided to, or as we were kind of thinking through what we want to talk about today, I was thinking about some of the ways that maybe have shifted a little bit, some pros and cons before betrayal and, how we showed up in the relationship, because I do know that the process of doing all of this trauma work individually has absolutely helped us become better relationally with each other and with ourselves and with other people. It impacts how we show up in the world as human beings. So I was thinking when we originally got together, I still had a lot of personal insecurities, and that really showed up in the family dynamic and the tension with the blending of the family, because I really wanted to be chosen and prioritized. And coming into and changing family dynamics and shifting around, that brought my insecurities, brought some tension in that had I been coming from a grounded and aligned and healed place, that would have been very different in terms of how we reacted.
Yeah.
So I think, when I look back and go over the past decade or whatever it's been, but even more so the past, 4 or 5 years of like the healing journey that we've been on, just how differently our family dynamic has shifted as you and I have done the internal work between each other, but also with Keegan. And just so I think I had a lot of unhealed parts and unhealed stuff that came up in the beginning, kind of in that area.
Yeah.
The pro, I think, that has always been there for me is that I'm very much an open book when it comes to my thoughts and feelings. So I don't really think you ever, even if it was like, so even if it was a situation like that where maybe it wasn't the healthiest expression of something because it was coming from a place of insecurity instead of a place of feeling grounded, I would always communicate how I felt. So you were never left wondering like, well, what is going on here? Like you always knew. So I think that's a benefit in the long term. Like I've always communicated my thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, I think so.
And then I was thinking about you, your lack of healing kind of made you a little, I don't know how, like, I don't know. Tell me if you would change this. change the wording of this or whatever. But I would say it made you a little bit more of a shallow person because you just weren't willing, or maybe I should say you didn't know how to go as deep.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, without a doubt, I was thinking about this. So I think the pro part of me is I've always wanted to serve. Like I always want to serve people.
I was going to actually say that, Patrick.
Yeah,
that was the next part was you're always willing to look. The pro part was that you were always willing to look internally and make changes, grow and prioritize my safety.
Yeah. Right. So I always wanted to like provide for the family, do all of that, be like my vision of a father was, and a husband was like, I'm working the hardest. I'm, doing all the things, those kinds of things. Like that's generally,
but the lack of healing sort of came in where it was, if I do these things, it means everything's fine and I have to do it all by myself.
Right,
and I don't go very deep in terms of my emotions or dealing with anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, what the addiction did for me is it prevented me from going, today, I don't know if I can do that. Today, I can't, can you help me today? You know what I mean? And that's what addiction robbed from me is because, my coping was the addiction. And so why would I, and it was shameful. So why would I tell you, hey, I need to replace this because, you know what I mean? And so that's what's come out now is I don't, like, what was it the other night? I was like, hey, I've got anxiety and I don't know where it's coming from. You know what I mean? I would have never said that before.
Yeah.
Before anything. Or, hey, I'm really worried about this person or I'm, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think our point is we both had we had a strong connection and we had some good things that we brought, but then we also both really had parts of us that were really hurt, parts of us that were really insecure, parts of us that were really wounded that, we did have some conflicts, or difficult things to resolve. I think everybody, when they get married, has like the transition period of like, okay, well, what's this family dynamic going to look like? Right. But then we also were blending a family. So that was a little bit different. We kind of had to figure that out. But so when we're talking about some of these things, as we go through the episode, I think these are some of the things that allowed us to move through it and navigate some of the stuff that would come up naturally through life.
Right.
And then also betrayal, which was for sure the hardest. So I also thought, why don't we start with like just sort of a loose general definition of what a healthy relationship is going to look like. And so I wrote down that a healthy relationship is one where you feel safe, relaxed, seen, loved, valued, and prioritized. You never feel threatened, insecure, afraid, or like you're walking on eggshells in any aspect of your relationship for any significant period of time.
Yeah, I would add to that I think it's a healthy relationship is one that repairs well.
Oh yeah,
and because there's always going to be rupture, there always will be. And I think you talk about me being shallow in a way. Like I always thought the rupture was
the problem.
Bad. Yeah, it was the problem. So don't ever rupture. So just smooth it over so there's never a rupture. Well, that's not realistic. It's how you repair as a couple, which I think we've learned. Obviously we had to after betrayal, but we've learned that quite well. We're much better at that than we used to be.
Yeah, and the only reason I said at that last part was sort of to that point where I said the aspect you don't feel like you're walking on eggshells in any aspect of your relationship for any significant period of time. That sort of I'm glad you said it that way because that's sort of what I was implying is like because there will be disagreements and sometimes that throws you off kilter.
Right.
But but a healthy relationship is one that doesn't live in that state because there are relationships where you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time. That's not healthy.
Right.
But if there's like, hey, we're in the middle of a disagreement for 30 minutes and then we've repaired, an hour later, that's sort of a normal. Yeah. Okay, so jumping into the pillars. Number 1 is you like each other as friends. So you and I have talked about this a lot. And again, this is just sort of that idea of like, let's start breaking it down. Let's define it a little bit. Let's get clear on what that means. So I think this is probably one of the biggest reasons that we were successful in navigating hard things. And so when I think about what does it mean that when I say that, we're friends, we get along really well in almost all aspects of our relationship. We just get along in terms of like how we spend time together and how we interact and we enjoy spending time together. So we pretty much spend all of our free time together with a few exceptions, but we like it that way. And we've created our lives that way. I actually saw someone on social media, a guy saying, the opposite the other day. He said, you should never be best friends with your significant other. And he was saying you should, be best friends with a guy and your significant other is a separate thing. And happily, very positively, most of the people in the comments were adamantly disagreeing and saying, no, your partner should absolutely be your best. Like, why are you going to marry someone if they're not your best friend? It should be the person that you're spending the most time with.
That's right.
That you are talking the most to.
Well, and it's the person that you're emotionally regulating onto or emotionally attaching to. You could argue, I don't know if that's the best term for it.
Co-regulation.
Co-regulation. And then if you have children in there, they're not as sensitive to your relationship with your best friend if he lives in Oklahoma.
Right.
Your children are going to be sensitive and reactive to your relationship with your spouse.
Right.
And so if that has a lot of health to it, then they're in turn are going to have a lot of health.
Yeah, that's a super good point. Yeah. That's a question for premarital counseling. Is this a nervous system that you want to co-regulate with?
Yeah, right.
Is this the nervous system that you want to raise your kids, your children? Yeah. That's a good point. So we enjoy spending time together. We joke around a lot. Of course, during betrayal, that kind of went away for a little while.
I am pretty funny, though.
You are pretty funny.
See, me just saying that made you laugh. That was pretty funny.
But I have to say, I am always going to come back to this in pretty much every aspect. There's so much safety in the relationship that it allows me to be loose enough to find things funny.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So,
of course,
someone could say something funny, but if your partner doesn't feel safe and relaxed with you, it's not going to be funny.
Right.
So, there's a combination of things that go into that. So again, kind of thinking about like what makes us good friends. Like you're the person that I want to share good news with, right?
Absolutely.
So I text you during the day. I'll call you
a lot
during lunch.
A lot.
I call you when you drive home from work. I see on Life 360 you're headed home, and I'll call you and be like, "Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's going on?" I know occasionally I'm like, you do know I'm coming home, right? I actually am.
But I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean,
sometimes I don't have things to say and I feel bad because then I'm kind of like,
But see, then we can just be on the phone quietly together.
Yeah, energetically connecting.
Does that bother you that I want to talk to you so much?
No, not at all. I mean, because if I'm busy, I can't take it. And I just, I'll just text you and be like, hey, I'm busy.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So, no, it doesn't bother me.
That's good.
Remember I told you I got all emotional last week about that. I was like, because life's going really well.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and the example I use is my wife calls me 17 times a day.
And that makes you happy.
Yeah, exactly.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
I probably didn't do that a lot during betrayal. I was probably like, stay away from me. I mean, it's true. I wanted a lot of space when we were going through some of that stuff. And you gave it to me. So, and then there was a time where I ignored you for like 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
And did not text you when I was out of town because I was like, I just needed my space.
Yeah.
So I think I told you. Did I say something?
Not initially.
Oh, okay.
But I continued to check in with you, and then you were kind of like, "Hey, I'm okay." Because I was kind of like, "Hey, are you okay?"
Creating safety.
Yeah.
You were creating safety that you were the addict, so you wanted to create stability and let me know that you were okay, while also respecting the fact that I was not ready to talk to you in that moment.
Right.
So
yeah,
that was important.
Yeah.
You're the person who supports me when I'm sad, or so talking about co-regulation, right? Like you're usually the first person that I'd want to talk to if I'm upset about something, if I'm sad about something, if I want to vent about something.
Read a blog.
Or if I'm tired, which I am a lot.
Yeah.
Or if I'm sick, we went through the whole cancer thing.
Right.
And so you were just like always very, very supportive of me through all of that. When I think about friendship, that's those are some of the things that I think about kind of within that is you get along, you really enjoy spending time together. You're there for the hard stuff. You kind of know how to interact through all the ups and downs of day to day, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I think like if you schedule a vacation with your spouse and you're not looking forward to it, it's kind of like, why not? You know what I mean? Like I like when we scheduled to go places, and some of the vacations have been a little hard, post discovery, but I've always looked forward to going.
Yeah.
Like I've always been excited. Like, hey, we're going to go do this thing, or we're going to go here, or we're going to go there. So, yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Princess treatment?
Some of our vacations are princess treatment. Any other thoughts on friends or how we work as friends?
I don't think so. Okay. I think we covered it.
I covered it.
Yep.
The second pillar that I was thinking about is emotional support for each other, which sort of went under the friendship.
Same, yeah.
But also it goes deeper than that, right? Because when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking like we really know the ins and outs of each other's insecurities. So like there's a point in the relationship at which over time you learn how people work, right? How people think, how people's families interact, how someone feels going to a party, how someone feels staying in for the week. You know, like you kind of, when you get together, there's a lot of, you know, how do you travel? Do you want to talk about that one?
When we travel together, or when I travel by myself?
No, like when, like getting together.
The one distinct difference is when I travel by myself, I don't wipe down the seats.
I know.
On the plane.
Which everyone should do. It's so gross. Take a Clorox wipe. Anyway.
Yeah.
No, but that's kind of my point, is like integrating me into your travel life. Patrick is he was a pilot. He loves to travel. He's super chill. And so traveling for him has always been like this really fun experience. And I'm more OCD and I don't like the flying. I like the destination part. I don't really like the flying part. And so the travel part is not really like, I wouldn't say it's like fun for me. It's become much more neutral, but at some points it's been stressful. And so that's kind of what I mean when you're talking about, you know, you go through these phases and you learn about each other. You had to kind of, that was a transition for you, learning how to travel with me and all of the things that go into my thought process in packing, my thought process in navigating airports and airplanes.
Yep.
How has that experience been for you, Patrick?
It's been fine.
No, but see, okay, but would you like to elaborate?
Point 3.
Moving on.
No.
Our relationship is going to crash over this one thing.
It is what it is. I mean, people are different, and you know that's the thing. We're all different. You can coexist. You can you know, work with each other. You know, and so it's important when you're moving through something like this. You know, a little bit of empathy, a little bit of understanding, normally goes a long way. And so if somebody's stressed out about a particular thing, you know, it's, you know, so here's a good example, because I was a pilot, like when we hit turbulence, it doesn't bother me. You get a little nervous, but that's okay, right? Because you weren't a pilot, you know what I mean? I am. So it's like, I generally kind of think it's cool. I'm like, cool.
Well, you've also seen too, over the course of our relationship, how the state of my nervous system going into traveling does impact how stressful or how, quote unquote, on my OCD is.
Yeah.
So the more healing that has happened and the more grounded and safe I feel in general, in my body, in the world, in our relationship, the more chill I am with travel. But so we've had like these ups and downs in terms of like how extreme that has felt in some cases when I've been really stressed and I haven't had a significant level of resilience and all this kind of stuff.
You've worked on it. I mean, we always think about the Disney trip when Keegan was a senior and he was like, "Hey, Dad, I think she's worse." And so, but you think about it, that was May of 23, so it was a year and a half, 2.5 years in. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2.5 years in, we were still struggling through some things and stuff like that. And you necessarily hadn't really worked on your OCD. So because you've been working on betrayal. So because betrayal had kicked off your OCD, it was like you were tackling us when we got within 10 feet of a trash can.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So it was just, but it was to your point, it was because your emotions were just dysregulated all the way around. You weren't in a completely safe. We were doing better, but you weren't in a completely safe space yet.
Yeah. So my point with that is when we're talking about emotional support for each other is you kind of learn those things and then you learn how to interact with people. And it's not always going to be perfect. Like I would sort of try to check myself, or sometimes you would kind of let me know if it was stressing you out. But I would say like a solid 90% of the time when it comes to those idiosyncrasies or quirks or stress points or whatever, you would respect those and work with me instead of against me, right? Like I think sometimes, to your point when you were like, everybody's different and empathy goes a long way. Sometimes when someone thinks differently than we do, we go into a place of judgment right away instead of a place of curiosity. And instead of a place of gentleness, it's like, well, we have to fight this thing or we have to be right. And that like never goes well in a relationship. That's never going to be helpful. If somebody is like, from my perspective, right, that just sticking on the OCD point, like that picture, that's very stress. It's very connected to stress. It gets exacerbated with stress. So when we were traveling and I had been through a lot of stress, it was way more prominent. And so what I didn't need was you really pushing back super hard and going, what is wrong with you? Why are you like this? Right. And you really never, there was only one point where it got really, you were really frustrated and you said something. But even then we communicated through that. And I was like, this isn't fun for me. And then we were able to kind of talk through it.
Yeah. And I remember you saying that, like, do you think I'm enjoying this? And that was like, that kind of hit me because I was like, oh my gosh, it's like you can't control your reaction at this point. So, having been an addict where you're like, I'm doing things I hate, you know what I mean? And so like, I could relate to that, right? Yeah. I can totally understand that.
And when we had that conversation, I was really struggling and I was like, I don't like this. And it's very frustrating for me. And it was a manifestation of, what can I control in life? Because everything's out of control.
Right.
And so I did, after that trip, really, really, really want to work on it and get better. And thankfully it has gotten super better. But so when we're talking about emotional support for each other. So that's like just a really, I think an example that's particularly evident. But also, we've been through a lot. I went through cancer treatment and you were always there. You would show up for every infusion, or if you weren't there, my dad was there, and I think you would coordinate, right? But if I had said, I need you there at every single one, you would have been at every single one. Right. You've taken me to the emergency room multiple times, and if you couldn't be here to do that, you would meet me there once the ambulance took me, right? Like there's been a lot of different situations where you just show up in an empathetic, caring way, where instead of going, well, what's wrong with you, or what's wrong with your body, or why are you like this, or whatever, it's been, I'm going to show up in the moment for what's happening right now and go, how can I help?
Right.
And that's been, with my ADD too, right before this podcast. Oh my gosh. We have what's it called? A mini SIM card. So it fits inside a regular SIM card and you have to pull it out for the kind of equipment we use. And I pulled it out and I was getting ready to record the podcast, and I typed something in my phone as a little note, and then I realized, wait, it's not in my hand anymore. What did I do with it? And I was like, Patrick, I just went from my office into the living room and I typed this in my phone and I can't find it. And I could not find it. And that's my ADD brain.
And I said, you went somewhere else.
And I was like,
said, no, I didn't.
I can't. There's I didn't go anywhere else. I had gone in the bedroom to get an ibuprofen and I had set it down on the nightstand. So anyway, my brain forgot that quickly what just happened. And that's frustrating. But you weren't mean about it. You were just like, okay, let's look for the SIM card. Yeah.
I fumed.
Stomped your feet a couple times.
In the pantry, I fumed.
No, but I mean, I think these are really good examples, because I do think there are a lot of situations where, because people's brains work differently, or people's family dynamics are different, or, whatever it is, or one of you really likes to go out on Thursday nights and be with friends and is really social and the other person doesn't. Like, those are the things that in a healthy relationship you sort of figure out, but you don't shame each other for.
Right.
I think that's really important, is like, you don't shame me for that. Sometimes we laugh. We mutually laugh at how my brain works.
Yes.
It does get frustrating. But it's like, there's nothing I can do about it really, other than what I'm trying to do, which is like, take supplements and be healthy and exercise and like do the things that help your brain,
Right.
What am I going to do? I forgot where I put the SIM card, So anyway, I think you do really well with that, but I think it's a good point. And then you've had different surgeries, and you're going to have a surgery coming up this week. And, and And then that's when the roles shift a little bit, and I help you out. And
I always think about this is where I let you in emotionally. You were always there for me. You know what? It goes back to that first point because of my addiction. I wouldn't let anybody in, right? And it also coupled with the fact that I want to serve people. So if your ultimate goal is to serve people, well, then you don't want anybody serving you, right? That's the unhealthy part of that. And so, but every time I let you in emotionally, you were always there for me. And so, you've been a great help through 2 knee surgeries, and then I'm going to have something done, here on Thursday. So, you're always great.
I actually think you were shocked when we were going through the initial couple weeks of discovery, and I started kind of getting things done and kind of, putting things in place or whatever you would say. Like when I started, I was like in charge of like the house and like everything was happening for a little while. Yeah. I think it surprised you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do think in your mind, you were like, this is your I don't know, your job.
My lane.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then when you were just like, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think am I wrong?
No. I mean, it was, there's absolutely things that I would have not thought of, that I would have not been able to do. You know what I mean? Going through post-discovery trauma.
I think it just surprised you that like I jumped in and handled it the way I did.
Yeah, we started moving very fast on some things. That was your impetus.
All right, the third thing, anything else about emotionally supporting each other?
No.
Okay. The third,
was that a look? Was I supposed to say something else?
No.
Did I not give you the princess treatment answer?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, okay.
You failed that one.
Okay.
Number 3, you play on the same team. This is important.
Yeah.
This is really important. Because some of the only times, very infrequently in our relationship, have I ever felt like we're not on the same team fighting for the same goal. And those moments where I feel very disconnected and like we're not heading in the same direction have been the most destabilizing moments. That's when things are scary for me.
Yeah.
But we can disagree, we can navigate conflict, we can be our own people, we can do all of these different things or whatever. If I know that I have your best interest in mind, I know that you have my best interest in mind, I know that we both want each other to be healthy and happy as the end result. And ultimately, like, if possible, that the relationship stays together. Like, that was kind of, I've always known that, like, we both had all of those things in mind. That I want to be healthy, I want you to be healthy, I would like the relationship to work, and we need to move through this.
Right.
And so I'm trying to say the only times, but I really think it's the only times that felt the most destabilizing were really when I felt like we weren't on the same page about something. Yeah. And sometimes you would, like, for whatever reason, and actually, come to think of it, this was before betrayal when these types of conversations would happen. And they were few and far in between. But I wonder now if you would have maybe a different perspective about these conversations. But I do remember there were a couple where it was like you really like dug your heels in about something. And it really did feel a little bit more disconnecting. I don't want to say attacking, but I did not feel seen and I did not feel like we were on the same page. And those were the times that I would feel sort of like, this is really destabilizing.
I'll bring one up. The window cleaning for yesterday.
That does not count.
I didn't feel seen.
I felt safe.
I didn't feel seen in that conversation. And the reason I didn't feel seen is because our windows are dirty. Nobody can see us.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Patrick. All right. Do I need to explain why we don't need the windows cleaned right now?
No, I don't think anybody cares.
All right. We did come to a resolution within like 5 minutes. Do you know what I'm talking about, though? Do you remember any of those?
Yeah, no, there's and this is kind of it's like a negative thought. One of the negative outcomes of wanting to be someone who serves and does a lot around the house and all of the, these things is back before I was healed, it would always be like, and it'll occasionally come up emotionally inside of me, but it'll be like, don't give me a hard time. I just did all the laundry. I just, you know what I mean? Like just drop it. And so, I think probably what you experienced in those moments might have been that unable to articulate, just like accurately and kindly, like, well, hold on a second, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. It's probably this like, doesn't, it's like, well, nobody asked me to do all that stuff. I did it myself. So I'm walking around with this huge satchel on my back.
Chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, which turns into a chip on my shoulder. So that's probably what was going on.
Yeah, but that also brings a good point into the conversation when you're talking about healthy relationships. It's not a this for that, or healthy relationships shouldn't be a this for that, or constantly only doing things to get accolades for it.
Right.
It's not that your partner shouldn't like validate. Like I say thank you a lot, and I appreciate what you do, and I acknowledge it and stuff like that. And maybe sometimes I forget or don't or whatever, but I do like validate a lot, and I say that to you a lot, that I'm thankful for what you do and contribute and all this kind of stuff. But it's like we shouldn't be doing things.
You don't want to scorekeep.
Yeah, scorekeeping. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the worst things you can do in a relationship, because over the course of a 50, 60-year relationship, either emotionally, physically, whatever, it all evens out, right? You all bring different things to the table. It's like a team at work.
From a different perspective, you and I could both scorekeep and be like, see, I'm so much better, right? Like you from your perspective could very easily go, I do so much more housework and I do all this kind of stuff. And I've like, whatever, name all these practical helping things, and you could check them all off and be like, you don't deserve me or whatever, right? You could say that to me, right? I could have that perspective and go, all of the pain and all of the trauma that you put me through because of your betrayal made me dysfunctional for a period of time with the level of debilitating anxiety and depression that I had. It messed with my brain. It messed with my physical health. It met all this kind of stuff. And you're lucky that I stayed with you, right? Like, so if you're scorekeeping, like we could both have this really skewed perception that I'm better than you and you don't deserve me, and that would be so unhealthy if that's where we were sitting in. Yeah. So I think that's an example of how, like, same relationship, we could both have that perspective if we were coming from an unhealthy place. Right. But the opposite can also be true. I go, yeah, you did those really hard things, but you've also created a lot of safety. You've also gotten into a really healthy place, and you do all these things that are really supportive, and you've always prioritized my safety. And if I am stressed, you always come and, help me through that, all these kinds of things, and vice versa. Hopefully, I have helped you in a lot of other ways as well, like emotionally.
Absolutely. I mean, and I've always said this, I wouldn't be here emotionally. I would, it would have been a much harder road on addiction recovery had you not been, like, I always feel like I would have ultimately gotten there, but I wouldn't have. I believe I'm thriving now, and I wouldn't have been thriving without you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the house would fall apart without you, and your emotional stability would fall apart without me. How's that?
You'd be like, it's been 4 days and I haven't eaten.
That's true. Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyway. All right. So we're talking about playing on the same team. So I think within that is this idea that you give each other the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, I know that you want what's best for me, and I know that you want a healthy outcome, and I know that you care about me. So if we are in conflict, if we're having a miscommunication, something like that, I go in going, you are a good person. And this isn't based on, just nothing. This is based on reality. This is based on the history of you demonstrating that you are a good person, that you do have my, so we can't just like go, hey, give someone the benefit of the doubt that has maybe like never earned it, right? Like,
that's right.
I do think that's an important caveat there, but you've earned it. And so I always go in knowing we're probably going to get through this. We have had some knockdown dragouts over the course of our relationship that have been pretty significant. They're very infrequent for us because we typically do get along so well and communicate so well, but we have had them. And I think ultimately somewhere in there, as we're navigating it, we know that whatever happens, we will resolve this. We will finish the conversation, and we will have a better understanding at the end of it.
Yeah, right.
We don't always know in the moment if it'll be a positive resolution, but we know it will be resolved. And so I think that's giving each other the benefit of the doubt is important. Like, I think, that's helpful in these conversations and in the conflicts. And going back to kind of what I said at the beginning, like, you don't really ever have to wonder what I'm thinking, because I'll just tell you. So that goes into the idea of mind reading, though, which sometimes we think it's like so romantic. It's like this romantic concept. If my partner can just understand what I'm thinking and feeling and anticipate it. And there is a point to, earlier when we were talking about emotional support and you living together and learning about each other and the ins and outs and triggers and emotions and all this, there's patterns, right? But the thing is that after betrayal, I tell my partners, you have to relearn. Because you're new people, you're different people. You now have wounds that didn't exist. You now have triggers that weren't there before. So something that would have made you happy, maybe now it's upsetting to you, or something that maybe you wouldn't have needed as much. Like maybe you didn't want him to hold your hand, or maybe you do want him to, there's all these different things that a year ago, maybe that was a different story. And now there's meaning and emotion attached to that for whatever reason, good or bad. And so that is important, I think, when we're going through recovery, is that we don't mind read. We don't mind read our partner. If we're wondering about something, we ask a question. If we notice that their energy is off, we ask them about it and we check in. Being proactive on both sides about that. Because I will hear sometimes, like a client will kind of come in and they'll talk to me about how something sort of fell apart in a conversation and where this couple ended up in conflict. And sometimes it starts with so-and-so saw the other person wasn't feeling good. Something was off. They didn't ask about it. And then the next day or a couple hours later or whatever, then this conversation started and then it devolved. And it's like, if you rewind it all the way back to the initial, if you notice that something's off with your partner, get curious about it. Ask them about it. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? How can I help you right now? What's going on, right? Mind reading or anticipating that somebody is able to, and I would say vice versa with the mind reading. So if you're the person that feels off and your partner didn't notice it right away, communicate it right away, because it can go bi-directionally, where it's like, we might think it's so great if our partner goes, oh, you made that face at dinner, let me ask you a question. But maybe they didn't catch it. Maybe they were looking down at their plate. Maybe this, maybe that, who knows?
Yeah.
But the more forthcoming we can be about our emotional state at any time, is going to be important. And this actually goes into the health and safety of a relationship as well. Kind of what I was talking about earlier is you're not afraid to communicate those things. That's a healthy relationship where your nervous system is not worried, is not afraid about saying, I'm anxious or I'm sad or I'm triggered, especially if it's about the betrayal stuff. Like you gave me space through this entire process to be angry, to be upset, to be triggered, to be sad, to cry, to all of these things in front of you about the behavior your behavior that had contributed to how I felt that way. And you never made me feel bad about feeling that way. And that's so important, because honestly, if you had, I don't know that we would be here, because you allowing me the space to feel hurt by what you had done, express that, take responsibility for it, and then try to help me feel safe in the aftermath and create stability for me to heal through that, really created enough stabilization that we were able to kind of move through. And that's really, really crucial, I think. So when we're talking about mind reading, if I'm saying, hey, make sure you share your emotions with your partner when you're feeling them, and you go, oh, I don't know if I can do that, I need to think about exactly how to say something so that this doesn't turn into an issue, then there's some other stuff going on there.
Well, and I also feel, and I don't know if this is accurate, it's just how I feel, but I feel that resentment and mind reading are best friends. And so, you're walking around with a resentment. Let's say, I don't know, well, she doesn't want to hang out with me tonight, and she doesn't recognize me for everything I've done and all this stuff. So you can see, like, the resentment has led right into the mind reading. She doesn't, recognize me for all I've done. How do you know that? You're making that up, but you're resentful for it. So it's like they can turn into this yin yang with each other, resentment and mind reading that can create a little bit of a toxic soup there in your head that can really kind of, it for the person who's used to shutting down, that's a prime shutting down emotion that's sitting inside of you. You're full of resentment and you're mind reading, so you just don't want to talk about it. Or the person that has explosions, that could be another.
And that's what my therapist would call the story you're telling yourself.
Yeah, right.
And that's so important because the story you tell yourself is very often not reality. And so that's the mind reading thing, don't make assumptions. Do not make assumptions. Get curious, get compassionate, and get caring about your partner. And that has to be bidirectional. When that is only one way, it ends up very, very, very unhealthy. And I do see that sometimes when one partner is very empathetic, very compassionate, and the other just takes advantage of that. And it's extremely draining. If you're going, if it's going to work and if it's going to be considered healthy, it has to go both directions. That is being provided both directions.
To take it even further, you talk about it's not kind to your partner, it's not kind to you. When you walk around with resentment and you're in a mind reading, you're not in good shape at that point, and so that puts a lot of stress on you as an individual. And so trying to understand what's the root of that and trying to process through that is important.
Yeah. Anything else about playing on the same team and how important that is?
Nope.
Giving each other the benefit of the doubt?
Nope. Go team.
Okay. Go team. Yeah, you have to be a team. I mean, that's the only way this is going to work.
Yeah.
Okay. The fourth thing is both individuals being willing to apologize and take responsibility for your own behavior. But I'm immediately going to put an asterisk and a caveat on this because I can hear it happening. I was listening to the podcast yesterday and they said that you need to take responsibility for your behavior and apologize for it. If that thought came to your mind when I read this one, you are the problem. Sorry, not sorry.
Wow.
Sorry, not sorry. Because this one is about taking personal responsibility. This is a self-reflection point. This is never about blaming, gaslighting, putting something on your partner. This is about you as the individual, whichever individual is listening to this. We are all responsible for our own healing process. Well,
and you can't heal anybody else other than you. You just can't. And so you have to, and there may come a time in your relationship when the conditions are safe and you can offer up some healthy criticism or whatever, constructive criticism or whatever that is. Yeah. But there's a time and a place where you need to work on you.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other piece that I want to say. Things that betrayed partners never have to apologize for, their feelings after being betrayed.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
End of sentence. You do not need to feel bad for being angry at your partner for doing this to you.
Yeah.
You're allowed to express your full spectrum of your emotions. Now, we've talked about this in other podcasts, the anger podcast. There's always a line to the expression of certain feelings, like don't go punching walls, don't go verbally abusing someone, don't go, physically touching someone with your, hands or, hurting people. But anger in and of itself is a healthy emotion, and you are allowed to feel that when somebody has stepped over your boundaries and hurt you. It's a normal response. Like, what would any normal, healthy human feel when somebody stabs you in the gut? They would feel hurt. They would feel betrayed. They would feel angry. Those are normal emotions. So that's the other caveat there, because what I don't want is betrayed partners hearing, take responsibility for your own behavior and going, oh no, do I need to check all of my normal, natural, healthy emotions? Because again, I work with a lot of empathetic betrayed partners who question themselves a lot. And I'm constantly going, no, you're allowed to feel that way. Like, it's a normal emotion.
Well, and I think part of the reason they question themselves is and we've talked about this before too, is there's not many of us that come from a completely healthy family of origin. And so what happens is you get into these relationships where there's betrayal and it's confusing and all these different things. And you go, yeah, I know sometimes, let's say your example, I know sometimes my OCD is a little much and it can get to people, but they're in the hierarchy of things. Betrayal is worse than OCD.
Right.
So I think, you always keep that.
Betrayal is worse than everything. I'm just going to say that. All right. So yeah, we all have to take responsibility for the things that are within our control, right? So you always took responsibility for the fact that you were the person that had the addiction.
Absolutely.
You made those choices, and you had to be responsible for not just getting sober. Like, I actually think this is another episode. Getting sober is not enough. Like, it wasn't just about that. You had to make amends for that. You had to help me heal through that. And you never shamed me for the time it took me for my natural emotions to work through. And so I think you did take responsibility throughout the whole thing. And then the things that, I would apologize for, I don't know, what would I apologize for? There were probably things like the OCD or like.
I mean, there were some times where you got really activated. We were actually doing okay, and you got really activated. It was a little confusing to try to understand what was happening. And so I think in those extreme moments, you apologize. You were like, it was probably just, I was off. I wasn't, you know what I mean?
I wasn't communicating well.
Yeah,
I didn't address it early enough, things like that.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so. Those are some examples. Okay, then the fifth thing that we're going to talk about is, I think, probably one of the most important. We started with friendship, and then we're going to end with freedom and safety in every aspect of the relationship. I think this is critical. I think if you don't have this is the definition of not healthy. And so I think you could swap that and say this is the definition of healthy again, is having freedom and safety in every aspect of the relationship. So what do I mean by that? So sexually, for example, you're never going to feel coerced. You're never going to feel pressured. You're never going to feel like it's an obligation. You're never going to feel weird or uncomfortable. Like there's always like, when you're, again, that whole getting together, learning about each other, like sex in itself is vulnerable and weird and awkward, but not in the sense of, wait, should I be doing this? This makes me uncomfortable. I feel pressured. I feel like if I don't do this, something bad is going to happen. If I don't say yes to this, he's going to relapse. If I don't do, there should never be, someone said the phrase, if it's not a hell yes, it should be a no. And I love that. If your body, mind, soul, spirit is not engaged with a yes when it comes to physical engagement with your partner, then the answer is no. And no is a complete sentence. And there does not have to be any qualification or explanation for that no. That's not something that you owe anyone ever. And so when you're talking about what is a healthy relationship, the sexual part of your relationship should be so safe and so relaxed and so comfortable and so secure that there's never a sense of overriding anything within you that's ever kicking up and saying, I'm not comfortable right now.
Yeah.
You should always have the freedom to say, let's pause or let's stop or I don't want to or whatever it is.
Well, I think what comes into that is, do you feel, when you're seen by your partner, do you feel valued? And so, of course, sex is one of those from a vulnerability standpoint. It's very, very exposing in a way. I don't know if that's the best word for it, but it's like, do you feel valued in that moment? You know what I mean? And so that, when you talk about sex, is it, especially after betrayal, where you did not feel prioritized? Do you feel prioritized? And it's okay to pause and go, right now, and it may just be me, but I don't feel prioritized. You know what I mean? This is coming from the betrayed partner. Let me make sure I communicate that correctly.
That would be me saying, hey, in this moment, I'm not feeling chosen, I'm not feeling seen, or I'm not feeling prioritized.
Yeah.
And that makes me uncomfortable.
Right. So how do you, what do you do with that? And do you have the freedom to stop? Do you have the freedom to talk it out? Do you have the freedom to say,
there were times where we would start something and then for whatever reason, something would come up emotionally and I would just cry.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a freedom within that I knew it was safe for all of that to come up.
Yeah.
And for the emotions to work through and that, you could totally stop and just, we could hug or, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so really, that has to be, that's healthy.
Right.
That is healthy. Safety.
Absolutely.
And when I say freedom, I want to kind of dig into that a little bit. So communication too, right? We talked about that earlier. So freedom and safety in every aspect of the relationship. Sexually, we just talked about that. Communication, we talked about that earlier in terms of, do you feel free to communicate honestly and authentically who you are, what you need, what you're thinking without fear of any sort of explosion or feeling gaslit or demeaned or put down for your thoughts or feelings, right? So alternatively, when you're talking about health, I mentioned this earlier, you sat with me through panic attacks. You sat there when I yelled at you on the phone or in person for the things that you did that hurt me really badly, and there were things that, crossed certain lines for me emotionally. That was just a lot. And so that was a normal reaction. You sat with me when it would hit me at night and I would have like tears and crying and panic and all of the things, and extreme grief and overwhelm and frustration at the length of time that I was feeling these things, frustration with myself that I couldn't heal more quickly, fear that we weren't going to be able to make it to a good place because it felt like it was taking so long. Like all of these things, you created a space where I felt totally fine no matter what was on my mind or whatever emotions came up, allowing them to come through, and that you could sit there with me and listen to that and validate how I was feeling, understand why I was feeling that way, and then be the person, which was so ironic and weird through the process, that hurt me, that was then also becoming the safe person that was helping me heal.
Yeah.
So I like, that was kind of bizarre that it was like you ended up being the safest person after being the person that hurt me the most.
It was a goal. It was a goal for me. And, I wanted to be able to do that, like and we've talked about this. It's like, if we decided to split up, I didn't want it to be because I had relapsed a bunch of times. I wanted it to be just, like I had healed, but you had just been like, I just don't think I can get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So communication, like, and all this is bi-directional, right? Like you feel safe coming to me, and when you do have big emotions, you feel safe, like telling me about them and communicating them. And there have been, the first time I saw you really cry was when you started telling me the truth. Yeah, and I was like, well, that wasn't the first time, because I think when your dad had passed away, I saw you cry a lot then. Right. But when it was so rare. And then when you started telling me about these things, it just kept coming out, and you were crying and crying and crying and crying and crying.
Right.
So and I feel like through the recovery process, it really was this give and take, where when I would be processing something, you would be there for me, and then vice versa. When you were really processing through something, I was able to be there for you. But then we would take turns, because I would be there for you and I would support you. But then like the next day I'd be really triggered about something, and you would have to hear that I was upset. And that didn't mean that I wasn't also being compassionate and empathetic to your process and your healing. Both can exist in a healthy relationship, and it's actually important that you allow space for both. Yeah,
it's why are you mad at me again? We just connected last night and made love, and it was beautiful. Why are you mad at me again? That's exactly what you said, because that's the way it goes. Those two things.
You're saying that would be from the addict partner.
Yeah. Like I thought we were doing really, really well. Why are you mad at me again? Well, because you hurt her feelings, and you really, really hurt her, but last night you guys were connected, and it was awesome.
Actually, sometimes connection can bring up more of the pain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Because when you feel something that is connected, it is jarring in the sense that the disconnection feels so opposite. Mm-hmm. And so when you feel a positive, healthy place in your nervous system, it can actually bring up a lot of the unprocessed pain that still exists. Right. It's kind of a frustrating part of the process, but a normal one that we shouldn't suppress for sure. So again, freedom and safety in the relationship. We talk about sexually, communication, decisions, right? Do you feel free to make decisions without, obviously when it comes to kids or scheduling or things like that, like you're going to have to work together as a team with that. But in general, like, hey, I'm going to go do this, or hey, I'm going to make this decision, or like that shouldn't really be a question in your mind. The question, will my partner allow me to do X, Y, Z? Shouldn't really be a question that you have if you guys have a healthy relationship. Yeah. So I get to be
unhealthy things. Let's make sure
unhealthy things. Yes. It's not like Patrick gets to go, I get to go do this and cheat on my wife. No, I should be able to say, like, we don't have young kids in the house, for example, so there's no coordination involved. So if I said, hey, I'm going to go hang out with my friend on Saturday at 1:00, I'm not going to have any sort of pushback from you on that. Right. If I said, maybe there's some generalized agreements that you have in life when it comes to money, for example, right? Like, I don't need to know if you spend something that's under $1,000. Like, let's just say that's an agreement that a couple would have, then okay, you have this overarching agreement. It's not like, hey, can I go buy some paper clips today? Right. The idea is that you both have autonomy to be healthy people, engaging in the world and with your friends and with your families without feeling like I have to check on how my partner might respond to this. Now, obviously, to your point, there's like moral and ethical boundaries, like addiction boundaries and all that kind of stuff, and coordination with kids. But like, just as a general concept, it's not that we're walking.
Are you free to be?
Are you free to be? Right. And that's it.
Yeah.
Are you free to be? Can you sit and go, I am me and I am free to be. And I am who I am in my body and I am who I am in the world. And my personality gets to come out and I get to go hang out with my friends and I get to engage in the hobbies that I enjoy and I get to engage in the things that bring creativity and happiness in my life. And unless there's coordination involved, I never have to ask permission to be myself.
Right.
That is, I love the way you said that. That's exactly it. That's a healthy relationship. Am I free to be me? And I think I just mentioned money too, the freedom with money. So the thing is, I think that freedom is how you have a healthy relationship. If I know every single day that I am free to leave this relationship, then you know every single day that I am choosing to stay in it.
Yeah.
And if I am only staying because I am scared of what might happen, or I am staying out of a place of fear, then that's not freedom. So it always has to come down to like freedom brings choice. Freedom allows autonomy. Freedom allows you to be who you are. And it's from that place that we can actually have healthy relationships. Because if I'm showing up as myself and I'm being seen in that place, then that person loves me and chooses me and prioritizes and values me, actually me, not something that I'm creating to, manage Patrick. Like I'm not, I don't know how you'd say that, molding myself into something that I think Patrick wants. If I did want to mold myself into something I think Patrick would want, it would be a marathon running, beer drinking, sports loving woman. And I am none of those things.
She hates sports.
And I don't run marathons and I don't drink beer.
I don't think you've ever had beer, have you?
Not interested.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's like that. But that's the thing. Like if I was like the story.
Just to go on that, I don't really care.
I know.
Yeah. So it's okay.
No, I know. But I'm saying the story in my head, well, you're supposed to say you are the perfect woman.
That's right.
Wouldn't change anything about you. You lost one there, Patrick. What I was going to say is like the story in my head, if I had to look at you and go, what is it that you like and what would be the perfect person that would like fit perfectly in your life? And then I was trying to conform to that. That would be what I would be trying to accomplish and shift and change myself into.
Right.
And that would so totally be antithesis to who I am as a human being. Like I don't like those things. I will never like those things. I'm not interested in those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I can't fake that, and so vice versa. Like I don't want you to turn into, well, maybe I do a little bit like a Broadway loving,
You want me to go to the Messiah every year? Ain't happening.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm super into music and performing. Right. Like you can't just turn into that. Although you have sung songs with me. That's really nice. But yeah, like that's not your whole personality isn't going to change just because like that's, something that I enjoy. But we both respect that, hey, you want to go drink beer with your friends or you want to go,
to some football games.
Go to some football games with Keegan or, whatever it is. And vice versa. You're like, go to the Messiah with your mom around Christmas. Absolutely. I'm not going to go.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But I think that goes back to, that's the idea of like, are you free to be yourself? And does your partner see and value that real, true, authentic version of you? Because that is what is healthy, is when you guys create the space and the safety to be loved and appreciated for who you are. And when you come down to a healthy relationship, it's really when you have two nervous systems that feel safe and grounded and then feel seen by the other person. And so you're living constantly. The goal is that a majority of your life together is co-regulating healthy, calm, safe nervous systems where you just feel relaxed to be in each other's presence.
Right. Yep.
That's a big deal. So the good news is that this is a relationship that can be created after betrayal. We've talked about how some of the healing work really has helped us become better. Not everything has to be in place first for this to be a possibility. A lot of healing and work through this process can accomplish this. But I do think that what allowed us to be able to move through this is that we did have several of these things kind of already established. We were already connected in a lot of ways before. So just some things to think about. There may be things in here that you guys totally disagree with, or there may be some things that made you think, or there may be some things that you would add to this list as a necessity for your relationship. And all of that is totally okay. We just sort of wanted to present some thoughts and get you guys thinking about it. Like I said, I think breaking things down a little bit more is we're just trying to help get things defined more clearly. Because I think that's where, when we have the vision kind of clearly stated, that's going to be the most helpful moving forward.
I also want to say that don't forget that it is a process.
Yes.
It's a long process. In 90 days, you're not going to be in the most perfect relationship in the history of the planet after betrayal. So it's going to take time. Now, can you look at certain milestones and go, man, we're fixed, but man, last night was nice.
I will say too,
breakfast was fun.
Right. And I will say too, to that point, if anybody is new listening to this podcast, welcome. We're so glad you're here. But if you are a newer listener, I would encourage you to go back all the way to season 1, episode 1, because this podcast really does progress through our healing. Mm-hmm. And so where we are today talking about these things, you have a different Kylene and Patrick than episode 1. There were episodes where I would do a solo episode being really honest and saying, I am struggling right now and this is really hard. And so if you are in the first year and you're hearing us talk about these sort of macro concepts of a healthy relationship, and we're sitting here laughing with each other, this is not where we were year 1.
Nope, not at all.
So I want to make that very clear and just say, hey, if that's where you are, go back to episode 1, work your way through the episodes through as you go. It'll probably parallel a lot of your own process and your own recovery journey. And we'll keep growing with you as the podcast continues to.
Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we'll see you next week.
Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.